Hi, everybody. We'll be starting in a couple seconds, so just waiting on things to get settled.
Welcome to the candidate forum put on by the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, and Buffalo Grove areas. My name is Sydney Galla, and I'm from the League of Women Voters in Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, and Buffalo Grove. I am also a member of our Emerging Leaders Program. Also, if you need the sign language interpreters, you can pin them. They're Amy Ventini and Celeste Moriscato. They will be switching off periodically and will signal when they do so. Closed captioning is also available and can be turned on at the bottom of your screen. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates nor the parties of any office. The League purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens and the government. Providing this forum allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the citizens running for office. To send questions for the candidates, please text 847-701-4701 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Tonight's candidates have agreed to abide by the ground rules provided by the League of Women Voters. They are as follows. Our moderator has drawn 2 names for speaking order and will rotate this order during the forum for questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their introduction. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. At the end, each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing. Candidates see both a 30-second and 15-second warning. So we ask that the candidates quickly complete their thoughts before they see the stop card. Time limits will be enforced out of respect for both candidates. Questions will be provided by the audience. Each question will be answered by both candidates. So please send questions to 847-701-4701. Again, we only use questions which can be answered by both candidates. Please only ask questions related to the office being sought. Questions will be reviewed by the League voter volunteers for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. Candidates have been asked not to interrupt one another. The moderator will repeat a question if asked. The candidates are to speak to the audience. I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's event, Gaby, a sophomore at Prospect High School.
Thank you. We will now start our candidate forum. We ask that you bear with us and note that technology is what it is, and we are all working to ensure this event runs as smoothly as possible. With me on screen, we have our candidates, our ASL interpreters, Amy Vendetti and Celeste Moresco, and our timer, League member Nancy Jones. I would like to note that the Q&A chat has been disabled for all attendees, so if you would like to submit a question for the candidates, please text this number, 847-701-4701, or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Candidate Brett drew for first speaker and candidate Walker for second speaking order. They are running for a 2-year term as Illinois State Representative in the 53rd District. Candidates, please notice the timer. When you see the stop sign, you may finish your sentence. The candidates will be in the following order for 2-minute opening statements. Candidate Brett, candidate Walker. Candidate Brett, please begin your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you very much, Isa. Thank you very much, Sydney. And thank you everyone at the League of Women Voters for putting together this forum. It's a critical and important opportunity for those of us in the community to hear from the 2 candidates and to face the voters as we approach this very important decision. My name is Jack Verrett. I'm an Afghanistan war veteran, a former criminal prosecutor, a father, and a husband. And I'm running for state representative because I think it's long past time for us to get back to common sense. You know, my wife and I believe that when we look at our political divide right now, there is extremism on both sides. And because of that extremism, those of us that are looking for sensible solutions are left behind. And we see it every single day. We see that in Illinois, you know, life here for a long time has been expensive, but now it's dangerous too. And we believe that we will not be able to get ahead as a society. We won't be able to thrive when there's crime in the streets, when crime is running rampant, when small businesses are being looted, when taxes are constantly going up, when educational systems don't meet our standards, and that people cannot feel safe within their neighborhoods. And that's why I'm running for state representative. As a former Army officer, I learned in Afghanistan that pragmatism, the focus on getting a mission done, matters above all else. That it doesn't matter whose idea it is, it doesn't matter who gets the credit, it doesn't matter where the idea came from or whether you believe it with your philosophy. What matters is getting results done to accomplish the mission. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm running for state representative to be a common sense voice to represent everyone in the district, regardless of political ideology, regardless of their party, regardless of their belief system, to represent every single person here and provide an independent voice for the people of this district. And I look forward to speaking with you all and answering your questions over the course of the next hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, please begin your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Issa, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. I have great respect for the organization and in fact has been nonpartisan, only focusing on access to the polls, registration, participation of citizens in government. And I love that mission and I'm glad they're continuing it. I am a veteran as well, and I appreciate Jack being a veteran. I respect that and honor it. I also am a business executive that ran a worldwide division of a company. I've worked in over 20 countries. I also have a background in operations management and operations consulting. So I come from that perspective. I joined this effort after I left the corporate world and consulting world because I want to be proud of Illinois again. That was my goal, just as I want you to be proud of Illinois again. We had serious problems, and I joined at least my focus on the problems of Illinois 14 years ago during the 2008 recession. We have serious problems. They are complex. They have many facets, and they take a long time to solve, actually. So my focus has been on achievement. It's been on numbers. It's been on finance. It's been on fiscal responsibility. It's been on solving complex problems for the long term. So my approach is always to look at what the core causes of a difficult problem are, bringing the parties together to solve it, and to come up with solutions no matter how long they take. And I am fairly well known in Springfield for working with both sides of the aisle and to focus on actual outcomes and not on arguing over ideology. So I appreciate Jack's comments as well. So I look forward to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will be moving on to the questions portion. Candidate Walker has 1 minute to answer the first question. The question is, what is the #1 issue you will be tackling after being sworn in? And what is it about that issue that makes it your priority?
The #1 issue I continue to tackle is the issue of economic recovery. I really think a lot of what we worry about in terms of short-term goals revolve around our feeling that somehow Illinois is not making it, that somehow our families can't make it here, that somehow our children don't have the opportunities we want them to have. And so I'm focusing on economic opportunity as my biggest long-term goal. Of course, we have short-term goals. I'm a champion for women's rights. I'm a champion for civil rights. I believe in better gun control than we have now, but those are shorter term goals. My longer term goal is to build an economy where everyone can succeed. You build that from the bottom up. You build that with things like training programs, development programs, ways for entrepreneurs to invest in our economy, and payout. So that's what I really want to focus on.
Thank you. Candidate Brett, you will have the same question. What is the #1 issue you will be tackling after being sworn in, and what is it about that issue that makes it your priority?
Thank you very much. My priority is making daily life affordable for all of the working families in the district and across the entire state. Families are being absolutely crushed by the high cost of living, by the high gas prices, by the high gas taxes, and the high grocery prices that make it harder for families to provide food for their table and to make ends meet and get ahead. That is my chief priority, is to grow our economy so that everyone can get ahead in their life and they can afford daily life. I care very deeply about our small businesses. I think our small businesses create the character of our community. And certainly that's true here in the Northwest suburbs with this very strong base of small businesses. But our small businesses are struggling. They're struggling under high taxes. They're struggling under overregulation. And it's my goal to make sure that our economy can grow and prosper so that everyone can achieve the American dream. And that is my chief priority.
Thank you. Just a reminder to send questions to the number 847-701-4701 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. The next question will go to candidate Brett. The SAFE-T Act has become very controversial. What, if anything, would you do to fix it?
Well, thank you. As a former prosecutor, the SAFE-T Act matters very much to me. I've been following it for quite some time. I've read the entire thing multiple times, and I look at this from the perspective of a former prosecutor. I look at it from the perspective of how can a prosecutor keep the community safe with this new law. And I've also conferred with law enforcement officers in our community and from beyond our community in the city of Chicago. And while I think that some of its goals were noble, the idea of criminal justice reform and that the goals of it were noble, the way they've gone around it it's unworkable from the perspective of a prosecutor and from the perspective of law enforcement officers. I think we certainly need to pause its implementation date so we can take a serious look at it, repeal it if necessary, but certainly fix it. And I'm happy to have greater discussions about the specific issues throughout this discussion that I would try to fix in it.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, same question. The SAFE-T Act has become very controversial. What, if anything, would you do to fix it?
Well, yes, the SAFE-T Act has unfortunately become controversial and unnecessarily controversial. I think Jack has come around to a position that's close to mine, that it in fact is a problem of workability. It's not a problem of the goal of the act. The act will not let 100 people out of jail early. It will not cause a purge where we all have to get armed to stop the purge in the streets. All of that was, as I called it before, unbelievable nonsense. In fact, there are challenges with the SAFE-T Act, but they are operational. The goal of the SAFE-T Act is to remove cash bail. Primarily, the goal is to remove cash bail from the decision on whom to hold in pretrial detention. And pretrial detention will be determined by the judges and the prosecutors judging the safety risk to the public of letting someone out and what that should involve. And that does not involve cash, as is true in the federal system as well.
Thank you. All right, our next question is for candidate Walker. Religion has played a big part in abortion politics. How would you balance your own religious beliefs with what your constituents may want?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I learned early on, I used to teach an ethics course, and I learned early on that the biggest issues with ethics are not good versus evil, it is good versus good. And so we have to balance the issues of personal responsibility and personal bodily autonomy and personal rights to choose healthcare for women and for families to choose their own route versus belief in life and the value of life and the definition of life. The difficulty I have is that I think everyone can take their own position on this, but I have a real hesitancy to intrude the government into those decisions. So it really is an issue of choice versus life and the definition of life. I was raised a Catholic. I once thought I might go into the priesthood. But nonetheless, we have a variety of communities. And so that's where I am.
Thank you. Candidate Brett, same question. Religion has played a big part in abortion politics. How would you balance your own religious beliefs with what your constituents may want?
Well, thank you for the question. I think at the outset, it's important to note that although abortion is front and center to a lot of folks right now, the Dobbs decision did not change anything in Illinois, and women in Illinois still have unlimited access to the full range of reproductive health options at every single stage of pregnancy, and that's not going to change. As a faithful Catholic, my wife and I believe that our faith is important to us, but we also believe very strongly in limited government. And because of that, I think that while faith is important to individuals, we have to make sure that we're respecting the rights of everyone. Now, as I'm thinking about it, that any humane law across the board would absolutely include allowances for circumstances of abuse, for circumstances where a woman or a mother has not given consent, and for circumstances where the life or the serious health of the mother is in jeopardy. So faith is important to inspire me to public service, but it cannot possibly guide me as a legislator.
Thank you. All right, next question for candidate Fred. Recently in Prospect Heights, a 14-year-old was shot and killed in a tragic incident where teenagers were playing with a gun they didn't realize was loaded. What can we do to protect our children from gun violence?
That's a great question. The whole question of gun violence, to me, I come at it from my own personal experience. And I look back to my experience in the military, and I think back to all of the training I received as a 25, 26-year-old young lieutenant after law school, learning how to fire a weapon, learning gun safety, learning proper care and maintenance of a weapon system, and truly understanding and respecting how deadly these weapons are. I think that we need to get back to that sort of thing in our education system, so that the students and the children that maybe don't have access to that level of training are really taught to respect weapons and know that they're not toys, and that certainly we also have rules to make sure that they're kept under lock and key so that kids can't have access to them. I think that we have to take a serious look at gun safety laws, and I think it begins with training, but the sort of training that Representative Walker and I received in the military.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, recently in Prospect Heights, a 14-year-old was shot and killed in a tragic incident where teenagers were playing with a gun they didn't realize was loaded. What can we do to protect our children from gun violence?
Well, it's a serious issue, and one of the tragedies is that it turns out that the cause of death among youth in terms of accidents and diseases, the number one cause of death now has become gun violence. It is absolutely ridiculous and disgraceful that that's true in our society. I am also experienced with weapons. I believe that Jack has right training and control, and locking up guns is good, but I also very strongly oppose using military-style weapons, and they are easy to define, and we both know that. Military-style weapons don't belong anywhere in civil society. They do too much damage, and were designed to damage people, blow them apart, and make it hard for them to recover. That is what the AR-15, what the designer said it was designed for, and we really should do something about that.
Thank you. Just a reminder to send questions to 847-701-4701 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Candidate Walker, the next question goes to you. Many of my friends have left Illinois for other states because of the tax burden in Illinois and are paying much less taxes where they moved. What will you do to lower taxes in Illinois so that I and other Illinois taxpayers can afford to stay in Illinois?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because I actually have a success. Recently, I was in charge of one of the elements of the property tax task force in the legislature, which did not produce a lot. But one of the only bill that came out of that was my bill. And it is a bill about how property taxes are calculated, how property tax bodies, which are all local, the state has no property tax. What are the rules when they have to go to you, the voter, to agree to a tax increase? And what do they have to disclose to you in terms of their reserves in the bank before they ask for a tax increase? So that bill is called a PTEL reform. It's the one structural element of property tax that has been passed in Illinois in 20 years. That was my idea, although I'm not a genius on it. That idea has been around. So I focus on that. As far as other taxes, we are a high tax state, and we have to do something about it.
Thank you. Candidate Brett, same question. Many of my friends have left Illinois for other states because of the tax burden in Illinois and are paying much less taxes where they moved. What will you do to lower taxes in Illinois so that I and other Illinois taxpayers can afford to stay in Illinois?
Sure. I'm going to pick up right where Representative Walker finished because we are a high tax state. And this is an area where I vehemently disagree with Representative Walker. I believe we're a high tax state because of decisions and because of votes by Representative Walker and his allies in the General Assembly. Representative Walker, first of all, back in 2011, he voted to pass a 66% tax increase to our income taxes. Later, when he came back, he sponsored the progressive income tax amendment, which, as many observers noted, including our state treasurer, could have potentially opened up the door to new taxes on retirement income and Social Security. He also voted to double the gas tax, giving us the second highest gas tax in the country. He also, while he's talking about property tax reform, that property tax relief task force he was on was criticized by political journalists as being basically a sham and nothing but talking points and nothing but a broken promise by Representative Walker and the other members of that. It looks like there's an issue with the timer. I know I'm over, but this is an area where I vehemently disagree with Representative Walker.
All right, thank you. Next question goes to you. I see more homeless people in my town than ever before. How would you address this problem?
That's a great question. So homelessness is often an outshoot of mental health issues. And that I think we have to be very serious about addressing mental health, both the root causes of mental health issues and also providing different resources. This is one where local governments, state government, and the federal government have to work together to provide services. And I think this is an area where we need a comprehensive solution instead of a patchwork of solutions that would come up organically. Coming from the military, we take mental health very, very seriously. We've learned to destigmatize the fact that people need mental health resources. And I think that if other parts of society can take the lead from the military and treat mental health the way that the military has learned to in recent history, I think that will help a long way in helping reduce homelessness. But I believe we need a comprehensive solution to this.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, same question to you. I see more homeless people in town than ever before. How would you address this problem?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that the homeless people you see in town are from here. I was on the board of Journeys, the largest homeless organization in the Northwest suburbs that also manages the pad sites. I got involved because I found in our local parks veterans that were homeless, that were in all kinds of distress over their experiences in Afghanistan and Iraq. And it just struck me, it was just like after Vietnam. And you're right, the issue is often proper care, but it's also economics. We have to have affordable housing for the people who live in this area and in fact, because of economic distress, have been forced out of their housing. We have to have more programs. We're building a building over at Journeys where people can temporarily stay as they get stabilized and onto other housing that is also available. It is a comprehensive solution. I've been on it for a while now.
Thank you. All right, next question for candidate Walker. Why aren't communities allowed to vote on property tax increases?
Well, that's a great question. Communities are allowed to vote on property tax increases above a certain level. There's a law called PTEL, which is what I tried to reform and have reformed just now, where the taxing bodies who are all local are allowed to increase their taxes up to a level of inflation or 5%, whichever is lower. And then after that, they have to go to referendum to the voters. What I've done is tighten that standard so that they have to go to referendum to the voters after they tell the voters how much they have in reserve. Because what I found, someone like the military, Jack, many of the financial managers say, I'm going to tax to the max and put the money in the bank just in case I need it in the future. So what I did was pass a law that says, you don't have to do that. We can recalculate at a different level. You can release those funds now and even tax less this year. And we encourage you to do that.
Thank you. Candidate Brett, same question. Why aren't communities allowed to vote on property tax increases?
Well, I think that they should be. I think we need to enable and empower voters to have a greater voice in the property tax burdens that they face. One of the things that occurred when we passed the evidence-based formula for school funding reform was this idea that allowing voters to give them the opportunity to have a voter-initiated referendum to lower property taxes. And I think that we should adopt that as well, and that give taxpayers and residents in a community the ability to force their local governments to live within a tighter budget. I think that's important for sure. And as to Representative Walker was talking about PTEL, there were some important comments that he made just there that I think it's important for everyone to focus on. And that is that under PTEL, the taxing bodies can tax the max of 5% or inflation, but because inflation has typically been around 2%, we have never faced high taxing increases, but we will next year because we're at the 40-year high of inflation above 8%. So we need to absolutely do everything we can immediately to give property taxpayers tax relief.
Thank you. Just a reminder to send questions to 847-701-4701 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Next question goes to candidate Brett. Have you accepted campaign funds from the National Rifle Association currently or at any time in the past?
No.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, same question. Have you accepted campaign funds from the National Rifle Association currently or at any time in the past?
Thanks for the time. I just want to correct something Jack said. It's inflation or up to 5%. It can't go over 5%. But no, and I got an F rating from them.
All right, thank you. Next question goes to candidate Walker. Do you support the Workers' Rights Amendment on the ballot? Why or why not?
Boy, this is an interesting question. Yes, I do support it. And I'll tell you why. A while ago, as many of you know, we passed an amendment to protect Illinois' status quo if the federal government or the federal courts did away with the Roe v. Wade decision. They did, and therefore we kept our rights so far in Illinois. The way I view this Workers' Rights Amendment is very similar. It has the similar language to the National Labor Relations Board language. And the idea is that if the federal courts or the federal government undercut the NLRB or change the regulations under NLRB, then we have a backstop in Illinois so that the rights that we have had for years here don't go away. Now, there are all kinds of detailed arguments in and out of pieces of this, and Jack is in fact an expert on labor law. But that is the concept behind it, and that's why I support it.
Thank you. Candidate Brett, same question. Do you support the Workers' Rights Amendment on the ballot? Why or why not?
Well, I appreciate the kind words and compliment from Representative Walker. I am a traditional labor lawyer. Since leaving the military, my job is serving as a labor relations attorney. I've studied it very closely. And the interesting thing about Amendment 1 is that while it's being sold as something that affects workers' rights because of the supremacy clause of the US Constitution, and because of this thing called Garmin preemption under the federal precedent, it actually can't apply to the private sector. And as we actually look at the transcripts of the debate in the General Assembly, the sponsor of Amendment 1 acknowledged that this cannot apply to the private sector. So this is only amendment that can really affect public sector employees. And because of the language of it, I think it's broader. It includes different terms like economic welfare. And I would encourage everyone to read the very recent article by the Chicago Tribune and by the Daily Herald, where they analyze the issues that ambiguity of it would have. So I do not support Amendment 1, though I am a true believer in unions, and I think that they have an important place in our society.
Thank you. Next question goes to candidate Brett. Why is the Illinois State Pension Fund among the lowest funded pension plans in the US? And where has the money gone that was supposed to go into it?
My gosh, it's It's absolutely horrible. And I think, first of all, we have to acknowledge that our pension problem is self-inflicted. It's because for years and years and years, politicians decided to kick the can down the road, to not properly fund it when they should have, and always giving themselves these things that were called pension payment holidays. That absolutely has to stop. And we've made some recent reforms to get better at it, but still we are at catastrophically low funding of the pension. Last I looked, it's at approximately 42%, which means that we can only pay 42 cents on the dollar for every dollar that the state owes its pensioners and its soon to be retirees. I think that we have to recognize that we cannot fix this problem on the back of pensioners and people that have dedicated their life to civil service. It's not their fault. Pensions are a promise, but right now they are a broken promise unless we make serious reforms to make sure that we can meet our obligations. And I support a constitutional hold harmless reform that allows the state to get out from underneath the pension debt and solve this problem once and for all.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, same question. Why is the Illinois State Pension Fund among the lowest funded pension plans in the US? And where has the money gone that was supposed to go into it?
Well, it's a good question. We are one of the lowest funded, if not the lowest funded right now. We were the lowest funded back in 1931. It's been a long-term problem. It got worse. It got worse under two governors, both Edgar and Blagojevich. Because we didn't make pension payments, and you're absolutely right, we should never have done that. But since then, we've been paying at a ramp where we paid higher than is required. And this past year, we paid even more than that. The thing that people always forget in this is that we reformed the basic pensions in 2010. That starting in 2011, everyone hired in the government comes in under what's called a tier 2 pension, which actually is fiscally responsible and actually beneficial to the state. It actually puts us in a better position than the other strategies of, for instance, going to 401ks with an employee part. So it's about halfway fixed.
Thank you. A reminder to send questions to 847-701-4701 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Next question goes to candidate Walker. Did the governor abuse his emergency powers during the pandemic? And do we need legislation to clearly delineate this type of emergency authority?
The answer, well, the first one's a judgment. And in my judgment at the time, I think he was doing the appropriate thing because we all didn't know how serious the machinations of COVID was, how it could pass, the effectiveness of masks, the effectiveness of vaccines, et cetera. And his goal was to save lives. So I can't fault him on that. Now, in retrospect, we might say he was too severe. In terms of law, there's absolutely no question that he had the legal authority to do it. It's also always been tested in court. And despite all the suits filed, they all failed. He had the authority, so I saw no reason to add more law to law that already exists.
Thank you. Candidate Brett, same question. Did the governor abuse his emergency powers during the pandemic? And do we need legislation to clearly delineate this type of emergency authority?
Thank you for that question. I have lost count of the number of executive orders and emergency declarations that Governor Pritzker has issued over the course of the last 2 years. I think it's telling that he is continuing to pass emergency orders related to the pandemic, despite the fact that President Biden did indicate that the pandemic was over recently. I think that the true failure of the last couple of years when it comes to Governor Pritzker's use of his executive authority and emergency powers is the fault of the legislature. The legislature had to take action. That's the job of the legislature. We believe in a system of government where there are checks and balances. And let me give you an example. Think back to the past year, all of the chaos that ensued because of the different, when that court decision removed the mask mandates for schools. That could have been resolved if instead of just using administrative powers and the JCAR process, if the legislature had done its job, had been involved in the process and passed a law, we would not have had the chaos that ensued. And so I think that the failure was of the legislature to actually act and represent the interests of the constituents.
Thank you. Next question for candidate Brett. The Forest Preserve is asking for a tax increase in order to continue their current activities. Do you support this increase? Why or why not?
I think families across the district, across Cook County and really across the state are being horribly crushed by property taxes, by gas prices, by the cost of groceries. I think that it makes sense that there are certain taxing bodies that they would like to have more, but now is not the time. Now, no one can afford it. I was just looking earlier today at the different tax assessments for our own area. And so in Representative Walker and I live in Wheeling Township, and the residential property tax assessment is up 27% in Wheeling Township. In Elk Grove, it's 33.9%. In Maine, it's 34%. In Palatine, 25%, and in Schaumburg, 29%. Those are the townships. And it's not just affecting the property tax increases are bad on the residential side, but in Maine Township, it's up 60% for the commercial side of the, and we know that those property taxes are going to be turned, it's going to be passed to consumers. It's going to result in layoffs. Now is not the time for any taxing body to be coming to taxpayers and saying we need more.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, same question. The Forest Preserve is asking for a tax increase in order to continue their current activities. Do you support this increase? Why or why not?
The answer is no. I think Tony Preckwinkle has done an outstanding job managing a very difficult job of the finances of Cook County, and I think that she can figure out a way to pay for this without a tax increase. On the other thing, Mr. Brett has made a classic error. The fact that periodically all of our assessments go up doesn't mean our taxes go up. Taxes are levied by the local taxing bodies. What the assessment does, as you well know, is it says who shares in that levy. So if all our houses go up, including all our houses in our neighborhood, so I was looking at it today, if we all go up equally, then our tax doesn't change because the assessed value of our houses only delivers our share of the tax levy. And if we all go up the same amount, our share is still the same. So we have to wait and see what the tax bill is.
Thank you. Reminder to send questions to 847-701-4701 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Next question goes to candidate Walker. How much should we rely on nuclear energy in the foreseeable future?
My belief, I'm carrying the nuclear energy bill in the House. Actually, I'm the only one so far. I'm a great supporter of CEJA, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, because I think we need to save the environment. And it sets all kinds of goals for clean air by given dates, and including methane, including carbon. But we are investing heavily in electrical alternatives, wind and solar, and we're investing heavily in electric vehicles. We're investing heavily in charging stations. We have a new factory producing electric trucks. We'll probably have electric buses. So all of that I'm for, but when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, we have to have a base load. And I think the best way to do it is maintain nuclear and invest in the new modular technology that is actually coming out of the military and our own labs here in Illinois to support that.
Thank you. Candidate Brett, same question. How much should we rely on nuclear energy in the foreseeable future?
I think that when it comes to clean energy and for energy production, everyone is hurting right now. The cost of energy is going through the roof, and it's only going to get worse as we get through the next a few months for sure. I believe strongly that climate change is predominantly caused by human activity. I believe it's real, and I believe it's caused by the fact that we're producing more carbon now in a post-industrial society than we did earlier. And that to solve it, I think that we need to adopt an above all approach and get out of this process of incentivizing certain industries, of using corporate welfare to pick winners and losers, not using arbitrary deadlines, and allowing the market to allow prices to fluctuate. And the way it works is that the more efficient we are at producing energy, the cost will go down. So I do support nuclear energy, but I think that we should let it be an above all approach.
Thank you. Next question for candidate Brett. Mental health issues have been contributing to many of our violent crimes. There's a referendum on the ballot about providing mental health facilities in Wheeling Township. Is this the right way to address the problem?
So we have talked a little bit about mental health already. Both Representative Walker and I have. Like I said, I do think it's important, and it comes from my experience in the military. I do have concerns. This is a local issue for the local voters in Wheeling Township to have their say. I do have concerns about it. Specifically, in studying it, it does not appear that there is a specific the service is already being provided for by Wheeling Township. Secondly, the amendment, if it passed, so right now the Wheeling Township budget is right around $3.17 million. And if this referendum passes, that would allow them to increase it by another $8 million on top of the three. Now, it doesn't make it automatic, but it authorizes them to do that. And again, with property tax burdens as high as they are, I think that we need to be careful about doing that. Representative Walker pushed back on some of the comments I had earlier about property tax issues. I am hearing it from voters going door to door that they're getting these assessments and they are absolutely concerned. And I've reached out to the tax assessors in the townships, and they are concerned about the high tax burdens that are coming because of what we're seeing right now with these increased tax assessments.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, same question. Mental health issues have been contributing to many of our violent crimes. There's a referendum on the ballot about providing mental health facilities in Wheeling Township. Is this the right way to address the problem?
I think it's a good experiment. It is a new idea. It's in a few townships. It allows the township to decide whether or not they want to invest in that kind of service. I think we need it. We have a lot of things we've done in the state for mental health, including training new mental health providers, training social workers, providing scholarships, allowing people who borrowed money to become a trained social worker or mental health professional to get relief from their student loans. We've done a lot of things. We've linked up mental health professionals with police departments and offered in the Safety Act a way for police departments to reroute certain calls to mental health professionals rather than them, which is what they prefer. My experience in that arena is a lot of what's in the Safety Act the police actually asked for, and some other things they have concerns with.
Thank you. A reminder to the candidates that when you see the stop, you can only finish your sentence. Next question for candidate Walker. What are your plans for getting control of fentanyl pouring into our country?
Well, that's a tough question. Fentanyl is an emerging terrible scourge of the country. It's actually been around a long time, but it's become so cheap to produce and so easy to distribute and so easy to add to other drugs. It's starting to get out of control. I think we treat it like we do any dangerous drug, where distributors get caught and punished, where it's tracked, where we have better tests for it. One of the shortcomings we have now is we can test whether fentanyl is there, but our tests on how much of a given drug is in a piece of evidence we have is sketchy. So it's a big problem. I agree with that. I know that Mr. Brett has attacked my position on small amounts of fentanyl and treating it as we would other serious drugs in small amounts for personal use to put people into treatment programs rather than send them to jail.
Thank you. Same question for candidate Brett. What are your plans for getting control of fentanyl pouring into our country?
Yes, as Representative Walker indicated, this is an area of sharp contrast between the two of us. Fentanyl is horrible. It is poison, and this is personal to me. My father was lawfully prescribed fentanyl after back surgery, and it ruined his life. He became addicted to it. It ruined his life. And still has impacts for all of us, even after his passing. in hospice care in January of 2020. I take fentanyl very seriously, and I think it is absolutely outrageous that Representative Walker would sponsor, let alone vote for, House Bill 3447, which makes possession of less than 3 grams of fentanyl a Class A misdemeanor. Now, 3 grams is strong enough to kill 1,500 people, and it contains thousands of doses. We're talking about drug dealer quantities of fentanyl, and he made it, by his bill, a Class A misdemeanor, which is the same as possession of alcohol by a minor. It is absolutely outrageous. And as someone that has had this affect their life, I think it's absolutely outrageous and insane that Representative Walker would have sponsored that bill, let alone voted for it.
Thank you. Reminder to send questions to 847-701-4701 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Question for candidate Brett. With corporate profits being at an all-time high and the cause for 53% of our current inflation, how would you propose to help with this in Illinois?
Can you repeat the question? Well,
yes. With corporate profits being at an all-time high and the cause for 53% of our current inflation, how would you propose to help with this in Illinois?
Well, I think that the cause of inflation is a cascading level of mistakes at both the federal and state level right now, which whether it is printing money, increasing the money supply, looking for demand side solutions as opposed to an across the board solution that allows businesses to produce more, that gets people back to work. I think that we can solve inflation by growing our economy, supporting our small businesses. One of the things that frustrates me so much about Representative Walker is that he and his allies, they passed this past year a $46.5 billion spending plan, the largest state spending plan in history. And despite putting all that money into it, they were not able to fully fund the unemployment trust fund. They recently put about $450 million back into it, but we still owe $1.3 billion, which means that our small businesses are going to receive a tax increase, and we're going to reduce benefits for employees that rely on those unemployment benefits. I think we need to get our spending under control, support our small businesses, and get and look for supply side solutions to the inflation problem.
Thank you. Candidate Walker, same question. With corporate profits being at an all-time high and the cause for 53% of our current inflation, how would you propose to help with this in Illinois?
Well, I think you made a good point. It's been proven lately that corporate profits are at an all-time high and have been a primary driver of inflation. What to do about that is really a tricky problem. It is a supply side issue, and I agree there, but the supply side issue is not solved in the classical way of giving money to corporations. Supply side issues are solved with trade approvals, with more production in the United States, with incentives for chips here, with more jobs in Illinois, with less transportation costs. We have a supply side problem. We have all kinds of buying power. People have jobs. We have the lowest unemployment in 50 years. The problem is the goods are scarce and it's hard to get them to market, and so people are paying more and more. It's a little bit harder to solve, but we have to solve the supply side.
Thank you. Next question goes to you, Candidate Walker. Should people be discriminated against or restricted for not getting a medical procedure, vaccine, or medication?
Well, who says anyone's discriminated against? I think what we have to focus on is public health. When people take actions and go in places where, in fact, they can infect other people who could die from that infection, then I think it's fair from a public health point of view to establish regulations about that, to establish lack of access, to require masks in hospitals, for instance. I don't know what discrimination means in that. If that's discrimination, I think that's misusing a label. If people are removed from their jobs, I think that's a very serious issue, and I think employers should figure out ways to employ people where they are not a risk to others. Freedom is about responsibility, and we are as free as we can be in this country, provided we don't harm others. I think that's the right standard for freedom.
Thank you. Same question for candidate Brett. Should people be discriminated against or restricted for not getting a medical procedure, vaccine, or medication?
No, they shouldn't be. I'm an employment lawyer. I deal with the discrimination issues all the time. I teach supervisors and managers on how to respond to allegations of discrimination in the workplace to make sure that every workplace is free of discrimination. And I think it's that we should absolutely not accept any level of discrimination because of someone's medical procedures that they may or may not have had. Certainly not from the government perspective. And when an employer is looking at it, I think that it always has to be in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Religious Restoration Act, and all applicable state human rights laws like the Illinois Human Rights Act. This is about personal choice, and it's not the realm of government to interfere in this sort of thing.
Thank you. Next question goes to candidate Brett. How do we ensure legislators have the time needed to understand new legislation before a vote is considered?
Oh, so that's a great question. So the way it's supposed to work is that there is a first reading, a second reading, and a third reading on legislation. And that process allows everyone, including constituents, to take a look at bills. What happens in the Illinois General Assembly is that the party in power, which for years and years and years has been the Democratic Party, they use these things kind of like vehicles or shell bills. And then they will run these bills through the process of a first reading and a second reading. And then towards the end, usually in May sometime, there'll be a process when all of the arguments come together. And then in lickety split, you'll have these amendments where they gut and replace the entire bill at third reading, is presented at the last minute or close to the last minute and voted on without the time for the constituents to really become involved, let alone for legislators to approve to make sure that they're well versed on it. I think that we have to make sure that all of our legislation, especially budget bills, actually follows a process to allow constituents the chance to look at it and for legislators to become informed about the issues.
Thank you. Same question goes to candidate Walker. How do we ensure that legislators have the time needed to understand new legislation before a vote is considered?
Well, it's really interesting. What actually happens, as opposed to what people complain about, what actually happens is that all of the elements of the bill have been seen by many legislators of both parties in committee before they even end up in a vehicle. It just amazes me at the end of every session, people who don't like a bill say we never saw it, when I know they have been looking at that exact language for at least 2 months. That is, it's just a canard that people use to criticize who actually don't know anything about how the legislature works. As far as budgeting goes, the thing that, and I'm a budget expert, the thing that really makes me laugh now is everybody who doesn't know how it works is coming up with, we need zero-based budgeting. We use zero-based budgeting. I'm an experienced zero-based budgeter from the corporate world. It is actually part of our process. We also have presentations in apportionment committees about what would happen if we had 15% less. So all of those things that people come up with are done.
All right, thank you. This will be the last question. Goes to candidate Walker first. What would you do to help the situation in our schools with record low test scores?
Well, one thing is I am so glad that schools are back and operating. I've talked to a lot of teachers lately, and they've been delighted so far with this year. Although it's been a little rough, people are learning, people are catching up. I think it's a matter of focus. I trust teachers. I trust school boards. I think they're working on the problem. I don't think all this nonsense about some distractions because they're getting some other subjects. Actually, they're focusing on the core, and they are in fact taking the time, and people are catching up this year. One of the causes is probably that a lot of the organizations that trained people to take, for instance, the ACT, didn't operate through COVID. So that had some effect, but I think we'll catch back up.
Thank you. Candidate Brett, same question, last question. What would you do to help the situation in our schools with record low test scores?
I think that it's clear that Illinois and many states, but certainly Illinois, has suffered a catastrophic loss of learning in our public education system. And I think that many people predicted this throughout the pandemic, that you simply could not learn effectively with remote learning, though the way that we did it. I believe that we have to focus on improving test scores, but by getting back to basics, by focusing on the core subjects that will prepare kids for the future, for the next grade level: math, science, reading, writing. I think that's absolutely critical that we prepare them for adulthood, and as best as possible, get politics out of the classroom and let the teachers focus on teaching students. My parents were both teachers. They were both educators. My mom was an English a teacher. My late father was an English teacher as well. I respect teachers, and talking to teachers, what they want is they want to teach the students. And I think that we need to let teachers do that and get politics out of the classroom and focus on core subjects.
Thank you. We will be moving on to closing statements. The candidates will be in the following order for 2-minute closing statements. First, candidate Vrett, and second, candidate Walker. Candidate Vrett, please begin your 2-minute closing statement.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Representative Walker, for also dialoguing back and forth throughout this last hour. As I look across our state, as I talk to residents in our neighborhood, going door to door throughout the summer, and talking to my neighbors, I think it's clear that Illinois is on the wrong track. Representative Walker talks about that we need to be proud of Illinois again. I am proud of Illinois, and it's because I'm proud of Illinois, that's why I'm running for state representative, because I want to fix Illinois. I think that we are headed in the wrong direction, and what we need to do is we need to ask ourselves, why are we living this way? We don't have to live this way. We don't have to live in a system where there are exorbitant taxes, where gas is expensive, where groceries are expensive, and where we feel unsafe. Representative Walker talks about the Safety Act and whether it's okay, and that but go to your local police department. Talk to your police officers. Talk to your local police chiefs. Ask them if they think the Safety Act is appropriate. Because I guarantee you, because I've done it, and they will tell you all of the problems with it. Now, Representative Walker and we talked about one provision of the pretrial fairness provision, but that's just one part of it. There are multiple parts of it that we have to listen to law enforcement, and we have to listen to our small business community as well. When they're talking about the overregulation, that it makes it harder for them to survive. When we're talking about all of the taxes that make it almost impossible for them to thrive and keep their doors open. 50% of the workforce in Illinois is employed by a small business, 50%. But this past summer, 47% of small businesses said that they're at risk of closing by November. In the month of September, 43% said they had trouble paying rent. And recently, 11% of small businesses are planning layoffs. We are at a critical point. We cannot keep going the way we are. We need change. I think that Representative Walker's time in office has come at an end, and I think it's time for a fresh ideas and a fresh perspective that can represent everyone in the district. And I hope to have everyone's vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick reminder to please not speak during the other candidate's 2-minute closing statement. On that note, candidate Walker, please begin your 2-minute closing statement.
I am proud of Illinois as well, and I'm getting there. It took a while because of all the progress we made in the past 10, 15 years, mostly in the past 4 years. We balanced the budget 4 times. Remember, 2 of those were before we got any federal funding for COVID. We paid off $18 billion in accounts payable that was costing us over $1 billion in late fees. Done. We have a rainy day fund that used to be a joke, and now it's going to have over $2 billion in it. I support as well closing the gap on unemployment insurance so that doesn't go to small businesses. And we've committed to doing that. We also have a strategic plan for growth in this state that I believe is really strong. It focuses on our strengths rather than our weaknesses. Opponents always focus on shortcomings rather than our strengths. We're a very strong state in a whole bunch of ways. We're the center of distribution. We're the center of venture capital in terms of high-tech businesses. We are the center of producing engineers. We're the center of investment in the whole electrification of our world. In many areas, we're ahead of either New York, Georgia, or California. We have all kinds of things we're focusing on. We're the #1 choice for data centers in the entire world. Since when are they going to start talking about our strengths instead of our weaknesses? Of course we have these shortcomings, but the shortcomings, like in business, come from growth. They're solved with growth. They're solved with hope. They're solved with believing we have a future. And that's what I focus on. That is where I can bring my expertise with new ideas, in fact, that are tough to get through Springfield. And I look forward to working on it as well. And I look forward to being proud again.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending this candidate forum. Originally, we had scheduled a forum for the Cook County Commissioner race for District 9. League rules stipulate a forum may not be held with only one candidate, so we cannot move forward following candidate Matthew Podorski's withdrawal from the forum. League rules stipulate that a candidate may give a 2-minute statement should their opponent choose not to participate. We therefore invite candidate Maggie Trevor to give a 2-minute statement. Thank you for joining us, Mrs. Trevor.
Hello, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for offering to host this forum. I'm Maggie Trevor, and I'm running for Cook County Commissioner for the 9th District. I have deep roots in this community. I was born and raised in Rolling Meadows, and I was educated in the area's public schools. I attended the University of Chicago, earning a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's and PhD in political science. I spent the next 30 years pursuing a career as an academic and business researcher that took me all over the country and gave me deep experience in education, government, and the workings of the healthcare marketplace. I returned to Rolling Meadows in 2015 to start my own research firm. Once back home, I volunteered for the city's environmental committee and served as the bicycle and pedestrian liaison to the city's traffic committee, providing the perspectives of cyclists and pedestrians on road projects and traffic issues. By the very nature of the work I do, I've learned to craft compromise with people who represent a range of interests through honest communication and respectful persuasion. These skills are essential to the work of responsible lawmakers who know their job is to put the needs of their constituents ahead of divisive partisan politics. I'm running to be your county commissioner because I know we can do better for the 9th District and for Cook County. We need better access to affordable health care, including primary care, reproductive health care, and mental health services. We need to make our communities safer by addressing gun violence, working to keep guns out of the hands of those who should not have them, and keeping military-style weaponry out of our communities. We need to make sure that county transportation projects are adequately address pedestrian and bicycle safety, and we need to protect our environment and the forest preserves that are so important for the quality of life here. We must pursue fiscal responsibility and fair taxation, work for better coordination of critical services across the county while continuing to meet our obligations and ensure that our communities are safer and healthier places to live. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Ms. Trevor. All right, we're having slight technical problems, so hold on for 1 second while we're waiting for someone to arrive. All right, thank you. Okay. Bill Robertson, candidate for the State Senate District 27 race, did not respond to the league's invitation to a forum for that race. So for the same league rules, State Senator Ann Gillespie will now give a 2-minute statement. Thank you for joining us, Senator Gillespie.
Thank you so much, Issa, for having me. I'm sorry that we're not able to have a dialogue on the issues tonight, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you. I really have been grateful for the opportunity to serve the district over the last 4 years, and I've tried to live up to the commitments I made when I ran. I'm proud to say that my first vote was to increase the minimum wage, one of the major issues we heard about in 2018. And I've also focused on things that we talked about during that campaign, passing the first comprehensive ethics legislation we've seen in a decade in Illinois that addressed issues we've seen in the scandals that we've heard about lately, including shadow lobbying, developed a comprehensive affordable housing bill with 2 other senators Feigenholtz and Hunter, that expands the stock of affordable housing across the state, sponsored and passed a major reform of nursing home payment, staffing, and quality standards to protect our residents in our nursing facilities. And I'm proud to say that both the affordable housing and the nursing home bill passed both chambers unanimously. I worked to bring $100 million in new funding into the district through COVID relief for small businesses, construction grants, flood mitigation grants, and housing support for Little City, Clearbrook, Northwest Compass, and Journey's efforts to house those that are homeless right now. We expanded background checks, and I sponsored laws to temporarily remove firearms from people who pose a risk of harm to themselves and to others. Going forward, I'd like to continue to work on expandable healthcare coverage and making it more affordable, to ban military-style weapons from our streets, and to other gun safety measures. And in addition, continue the work that Representative Walker and I started on property tax transparency and stabilization through TIF reform and the continuation of the work on PTEL and other disclosure measures. If you give me the opportunity to go back to the General Assembly, I promise to continue the work that we've been working on and to continue to represent the district. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all of our participants this evening. I will now return to our MC.
Okay. Thank you to Issa Gaby for being our moderator. Please make sure to register to vote, make your plan to vote, and then make sure your voice is heard and counted this election day. Need help? The League of Women Voters, Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, and Buffalo Grove is here to help. Check out our website at www.LWV-AH.org for voter registration information, mail-in information, and plan your ballot, as well as early and day of polling locations. Again, check us out at www.LWV-AH.org and follow us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We even have accounts specifically for youth at student.lwvah and at mascot at pause for votes. And make sure once you're ready to vote, you tell 10 friends where they can find all the information they need to be counted. www.lwvah.org. We are grateful to all of you for joining us, and to our candidates, Mark Walker and Jack Redd. Our democracy relies on citizens willing to run for office. To our ASL interpreters, Amy Venditti and Celeste Moriscato, and to all of our volunteers and the League who worked tirelessly to bring you this free program. Have a great day.